Absolutely. Hello. Hi.
Hi.
I'm putting the PPT on.
So are we on now?
No, no, people are not haven't yet joined. But if you want me to run through it or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I'll do is, can we just go through can we just come back to face to face?
Sure, sure. Yeah, I can. Hmm.
Give a big smile, sort of.
Yeah.
All right, good. You're looking too serious, and I'm like wondering, oh my God, I'm on.
No, so actually what happened is in the like lockdown-ish thing that happened in April, in the office there was this whole pigeon nest situation. And by the time I reopened it, they already had babies. And yesterday they finally flew off with the babies. So today I'm getting it clean. So like I'm sitting away from them so that they can clean it easily. But yeah, like they were supposed to come in earlier so that I'm free by this time. So yeah, that's what the expression was about. Like, oh, they're
I,
not yet done. Yeah.
I was thinking maybe you're talking in metaphors when you say pigeon nest cleaning situation. I was like, okay, what is that? Like, what? Okay.
No, no. So yeah, they're done. It's just maybe in the middle, I'll actually go and sit where I actually sit. Right now, I'm sitting away so that they have some space.
Okay, so what I wanted to say was, first you introduced me.
Hmm.
I connect the two. I also talk about the two halves of my presentation.
Hmm.
One is that how I'm using photographs and images
Hmm.
actually connect to the work, which is the
Hmm.
embodiment work, which is the first half of the work I do with the boys.
Hmm.
And how photographs is like, this is the first half is like a uh, critical consciousness, critical thinking, you
Hmm.
know.
Hmm.
And the second question is the creative process. And
Right.
then the two sides of an arts-based therapist,
Hmm. Hmm.
and the critical part is the part which is done before you get into experiential understanding, and
Hmm.
after the experiential work is done. So
Hmm.
the work with the clients and the work with the group is not an intellectual cerebral work.
Correct.
It's a non cognitive work, but there
Yes.
is a creative critical thinking which happens beforehand and which
Hmm.
happens afterwards.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
therefore, a preparation for people who work with group
Hmm.
population, that
Hmm.
kind of critical thinking is required. And
Correct.
we are using the critical thinking with visual images so that we can
Hmm.
deconstruct and look at this critical work. It's like a
Sure.
preparation. And
Yeah.
this is what I would say after you've spoken.
Hmm.
And then I'll say, okay, now Sadaf, let's go slide by slide. I
Hmm.
will also take a little pause. I won't manically rush, hopefully not, because we've got 2 hours. So I will
Yeah.
try and break my words, talk about it. So
Hmm.
you will put me on the side, and you will share the photos, and I will take them through it.
Hmm.
After done,
Hmm.
you can tell them beforehand that whatever questions are coming, they
Hmm.
should come to you, and you will park them.
Yeah.
And then after that, I'll again talk about my work, and
Hmm.
then we'll break the questions into two parts: one on the PPT and
Hmm.
one on the PPT and one on my work. You know,
The work stuff. Yeah.
yeah, work stuff, which will divide into two parts. One is
Hmm.
critical thinking, and one is creative process. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Done.
That is the division of,
Flow. Yeah.
so
Got
that
it.
we can connect these two parts together and they don't look
Correct. Correct.
fragmented and
ठीक है. Done.
disconnected. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So we'll wait for people to come in, and around 2:05-ish we'll begin.
I didn't know I was being paid for it. So how much have you paid me?
We paid, so we had a basic fee of 2,000 regardless of the number of people. But since we got more people than expected, we're giving 3,000 to the speakers.
To the speakers? Oh,
Yeah.
all right.
So we were looking at maybe getting like 20 people or something, but we got like 50 for some sessions like yours. And yeah,
I would like to do something else. If
sure.
we can have a follow-up session. So I'll come
Okay.
to Bombay in July.
Oh,
So I was
perfect.
thinking, and then Neelam has been asking for workshops and other things like that. So I'm
Yeah.
thinking those people who are in Bombay, who are
Hmm.
interested, we can
Yeah.
do a masculinity workshop, masculinity feminine, called Sacred Masculine, Sacred Feminine
Yeah.
workshop, where women and men
Hmm.
both can join in to
Hmm.
explore the inner masculine, inner feminine. I can talk about that at the end of
Hmm.
it. Guftugu
Sure.
can Guftugu and Imperfect Things can sort of organize.
Posted. Yeah,
Is that
yeah.
possible?
Just the only thing is, I don't know if you've heard, but like we now have a Delta variant of the virus. So I guess like we'll keep it tentative as well because I don't know if Bombay will shut down again in
When
July.
is this Delta thing happening? What is this Delta thing? I don't know.
So I think the virus just keeps mutating, and the Delta one is what is the latest sort of variation. We've had the first death of Delta yesterday. Delta plus, oh, there's one more. Okay. So yeah, like this time because they wouldn't want like second wave sort of stuff happening, they might close down earlier than the full blow of it. So I would definitely want us to do this. But yeah, let's see what like travel looks like in July.
Also the thing is that of course if it shuts, then it shuts, then I can't come in. But I think there's a possibility that I like to do this as a follow-up,
Hmm.
because what happens then
Hmm.
is we take it to the level of healing then, and we also
Yeah.
create kind of a platform to
Hmm.
talk of the sacred masculine, the sacred feminine, and
Yeah.
take gender work and gender variances to the
Hmm.
next level,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
this can be also your brand of work,
Yeah.
considering
Yeah.
Aryan and you both are interested in gender.
Yeah.
It can be an interesting look at the concept of also the Sufi concepts of
Hmm.
Jamali Jalali and also Ardhanareshwar. I mean,
Hmm.
both use both divergent liminal traditions to talk about
Hmm.
it to counter toxic masculinity. You know,
Fair. So it would be open only to people who come today, right? Like because it's like a level two sort of a
this
thing.
is what I would ideally like as
Yeah.
such, but also
Right.
it can be open to other people too, so that
Hmm.
it doesn't sort of restrict it. We can have
Yeah.
two parts of it. One, we can have an online aspect of it,
Yeah.
those who can't make it physically, and then we can
Hmm.
have a physical aspect of it also.
Sure. Fair. Sounds great. Yeah, I really hope like we don't have to do a full shutdown and things can still happen in July.
Well, we are just opening up, so I don't know how we can also shut up.
Yeah, fair, fair. So
We'll
there
jump.
are a lot of people who signed up for the session, but since we are also giving recording, considering uncertainty of pandemic, we may see like 20 to 30 over here, and a lot of them will probably consume the recording only.
I'm okay. We should start by on time by 2:10 or 2:05, 2:10. Look at it. Maximum
Hmm.
give 10 minutes, and then
Yeah, yeah, fair. Yeah,
yeah.
I
I
don't
mean,
think we should wait a lot because
not wait
both the
not wait much, because
yeah,
I think the more we wait, but get a sizable
hmm,
20 at least in.
yeah, yeah. So we should be able to get both the sections in if we begin on time, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
Hmm.
Because both the
Yeah.
sections are important, because
Hmm.
uh, both with the work with the transgender and the juvenile boys, they're two different kind of thing. And also,
Correct.
I have left some slides out or something out,
Okay.
and
Sure.
I can talk about those slides also, like the muffled male and the servile man. I haven't given that slide because
Okay.
my techno challenges came about, and it slipped off. There was one with Indira Gandhi with all men around her, which was a very
Ah,
interesting one.
interesting image. Yeah.
Very interesting imagery. Oh my God, that's
Hmm.
such an interesting imagery. I had
Hmm.
it saved, but I didn't save, and I couldn't find it, and then it went
Hmm.
off. So that's
Yeah.
what.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So maybe those can be just verbally, like you put up.
Probably. Yeah.
Okay. Hello, everyone who's here already. We are waiting for a few more people, and in the meantime, Vikramjeet and I were discussing the flow, and also if like there can be a more experiential sort of part to his session only, uh, because today is more of understanding masculinity and the creative part of it, but probably the self application etc. could happen as a part two for those interested, and here in Bombay it could also happen in person based on of course the COVID situation. So But yeah, that's the hope. Mm. We are at 2, so I think around 2:05 we should start.
Paris.
Hello, new people. Glad to have you all here.
Sadaf, this light is okay. Am I?
Yeah,
Am I? Am I?
yeah, yeah.
Just 1 second.
Sure. So this session is being recorded as pandemic uncertainty, and so a lot of people were not able to commit to making it on every Saturday that they signed up for. So the recording will be shared with whoever has signed up for this session, including everyone who's present here. So in case you guys will just want to absorb today and like kind of maybe make notes next time on the recording, that's fair. But I'm just informing you because in case any of you are not okay with being recorded, then you can keep the video off. Otherwise, they're also fine with you keeping the video. In case any of you, kind of signed up in groups or know other friends who signed up for this, I would urge you to ask your friends to join live if possible, because the Q&A part is going to be very interesting, and that they cannot get if they watch the recordings. Yeah. Vikramjeet, whenever you're ready, we can begin. To do everything in time.
Okay, all right. Just give me a second.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, Sadhu.
All right. So welcome everyone. This is the second of our event calendar, Nuances in Mental Health. Today's topic is deconstructing masculinity and understanding Vikramjeet's work done with adolescent boys and men. So Vikramjeet is going to be facilitating today's session. I'll be handing over in some time. The session is in two parts. The first part is where he will be using photographs to talk about various aspects of masculinity or types of masculinity. And after that is done, he'll talk about his work in various settings with adolescent boys, men, etc. I would encourage you to send your questions to me if possible, so that the chat doesn't disturb him or other people, and I'll make a note of it and we'll take them towards the last half hour, 40 minutes, because that gives me the opportunity to condense it if there is like themes which are common to questions. So hope that's okay with everyone, and I'll hand it over to Vikramjeet and share his PPT whenever he's ready.
Okay, hello everyone. This feels very strange. It feels like I'm talking to myself or talking to Sadaf. But can we see everyone just for a second? Just for before we begin, just put on your screen. Just let me like a look at all of you, and then just say hi to everyone. So I just know that who all I'm talking to.
Yeah, like just for a minute, and then we can all go. Like, I understand the recording thing is a discomfort. So if for a minute, if you could be there, and then put it off. Thank you. So many people have gone.
14 people are there. Are we starting now with 14 people?
I think you must be seeing only the video onwards. There are a total of 21, including you and me.
I see. Well, thank you for joining in, and it's just great to see all of you. I think we can begin now, and so I can just start condensing and breaking the whole PPT into two parts. Okay, great, super. Okay, great, excellent.
I'll share it now.
Yeah.
Okay.
So before sharing it, just before, yeah, you can share. You can share it.
Okay.
The first slide, at least. The first slide. Okay, great.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just let me say just why we are sort of doing this particular thing is because we've divided these two aspects. Normally, when we think of arts-based therapists, which is my vocation, often the understanding is, or the misunderstanding is that it's that there are no critical thinking or critical sort of work behind it. You sort of work with affect and you work with the direct experience, but there as if there is no other
thought
processes behind it. So what happens is that a lot of people get into it because of the experience of it, but I think there is a lot of critical thinking required beforehand, And there's a lot of critical thinking after the experiential work with the client population. So it's not that, you know, it is without critical thinking or thought is not required. That is not true. In our training and our understanding, in my training at least, not just with my arts-based training, but all the work, a variety of work I have done, um, it's important to look at it critically, to understand it, process it, as to why you use certain exercise and why you don't do certain exercise. What are the lenses that you look through and what not, you know? So I think this particular half, which I'm working with the images, is the critical thinking aspect of it. You know, in my limited understanding of academia, I'll try and use the words, which is sort of the way we can look at it. And the second half will be about how this critical thinking translates into creative processes. So first,
Correct.
critical thinking, that's why the word deconstructing.
Mm.
And then the second half would be creative processes. And then we take we take the reflections, the question and answers and other things like that, and see if we can bridge these two or not. You know,
Correct. Yeah.
so in a way, the work with the adolescent boys, the work with men, is the experiential aspect, the creative aspect. This is the work which is also in my mind, in sense, what has gone in my mind in that
Yeah.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's look at this word deconstructing masculinity through images. That, I mean, then we have an assumption and understanding that something has been constructed. And what we will do then, we'll take the strands and we'll break it and see how we break it, and why images, because it's the visual image we see, and why the lenses, because we are putting on a certain lens, a certain framework. So as an arts-based therapist, our work is with the metaphors, where the image itself is the metaphor, and therefore everything we do is metaphorical, or that is the lens through which we sort of enter into experience. So here the symbolic, the imaginary, and the real are very much at play, you know, as in a sense, how we enter from reality, which is our daily life, into an imagined reality, and through the symbols, the symbolic becomes the negotiator between the imaginary and the real, you know. And in that sense, the triangle forms by itself, and we play with that. So let's look at this word. Let's look at the lenses now. So I think what we're going to do now, we can look at each image, and each image we're going to pause for a bit to see what it does to us and how it speaks to us.
Sure.
And then I'll start deconstructing and looking at it from the title given. And so these titles might look arbitrarily, like in a sense, arbitrary word, but they have a certain kind of a sequence as to why I'm beginning with something and ending with another image.
Something else. Yeah.
The image has a certain kind of a cyclical sense to it, and not so much linearity in the way placed. Okay, let's begin then. Let's look at the first image. And you can just keep me around, so I can just see myself and just focus on the image. You know?
Sure. I can pin your video. Yeah.
Yeah, just my video. Yes, thank you. So let's look at this image, which I have titled. So these photographs are from famous photographers. I've sort of collated. Well, some of are getting known or will get known, and some of them are really, really famous. So this one is the cast embodied man, and I have kept it. So if you look at the image, it has a face and the body hunched, and it has a certain kind of, like, he's almost living in a hole. So he doesn't have much clothes on. His face is magnified. He has a certain eyes which are certainly bulging, and if you look at it, he's hunched, and he's obviously in a hole of some sort. We don't know what the caste is, but we if we know the caste divisive lines of India, we would obviously assume that he's definitely not upper caste, you know, and that is because of the hunched body. And why am I doing this particular thing with the caste? Is because I felt often when you look at men and stereotypes of men, you immediately do not think of the word caste as to a man. You think of caste separately, and you think of man gender separately. But these are collapsed together: the class, the caste, the nationality, the fair skinness or the not fair skinness, all those kind of things. The immense lines and divisiveness of the subcontinent, just not India, but also Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, the whole lot of it, you do think of the fact that, I mean, you don't necessarily think of caste and man together. You think of man and masculinity as something tough, as something, macho or stereotypically strong. And that's how you look at a man versus woman and gender oppression and those kind of things. But if you look at this man, the caste is embodied in his body itself, so because we are looking at embodiment, how the body holds the oppression by his shoulders, and the way his face is, and the way his fear, or being terrified, and poverty, and all of that is inscribed on his body. He's naked of all sorts of pretensions and any sort of things, which brings up a sense of upper status, a sense of powerlessness. So you see the powerlessness. And one of the things I have noticed, and the reason I'm sort of talking about this, and I think I mentioned in the beginning of when I was promoting this work, is that when I look at the man who comes and clears the garbage, his body is always hunched because he's constantly picking up the garbage. So his natural habitus, or the habit which is in his body, using a Bourdieu term, is lowered, and he sort of picks up, and he's constantly picking up. Whereas the woman who works in my house, in a sense, she's a single earning woman, like, a single mother practically. And so she sort of negotiates the gender barriers and works every day, and her body has to be held high, even because she carries herself a certain dignity, a certain kind of straight backness. And so she's always ramrod straight in her back, even though even though you would see that, oh, she's a woman and therefore she's oppressed, but her body doesn't show that, because her body has fought the barriers, and she's a working woman in an urban city. Whereas the garbage man, the body, the non-verbal, shows a kind of oppression. For a drama therapist, or somebody who works with roles, or someone, a play therapist or an art space therapist, the dramatized mind, which is projected, our lenses often look at what the body is saying. I mean, as a theater director, because I work with physicality, the first thing in the stage is physicality, or a performance artist, you look at what the body shows, So for me, I notice the body, what is the body saying to me? And here, the body is showing oppression, it is showing forlornness, it is showing a certain kind of suffering, embodiment of suffering and pain. Yeah. So this is the first slide. Then we go on to the next slide. I think, could you, is my face covering the man's face by any chance?
No, it's a window on the side, I think.
Okay,
but we'll just check with the audience anyway. Everyone can see the picture,
see
right?
Photograph? Yes. Okay, great.
Yeah, okay.
So I can't see.
Yes,
it.
It's visible.
Okay, great, excellent. So if you look at, if you look at this man's face, I've called him the displaced rural man. And this photograph is very, very powerful, because at one level it shows him, but it's sort of a haziness. It shows the rest of his family, his wife, his partner, other people sleeping in the bus. I've called him rural because, as you will see the later on images, India's another line is a rural and the urban divide. So if there's caste divide, there is rural urban divide. So I like to use these kind of words now to trigger, to simulate. Why is it displaced? Is because the body itself, well, I don't know whether he's rural or not. I'm assuming that he is, by the woman next to him, and by the way the body is placed by the window, it looks out. In a way, the body shows a certain kind of a fragmentation, a certain kind, whether the image has been placed, it cuts through. There's a kind of a Procrustusness, like Procrustus is the one who disembodies and dismembers men before they reach Athens, to see whether you can fit in or not, And so there's a Procrustan sort of an image of a displacement of his neck, the way it's severed, the way it's kept on the side, the way his other body is placed. You see a dismemberment. And therefore you understand that when somebody comes from the rural world, he's like a person who's entered through the looking glass, who's very lost, and the lost aspect is on his masculinity. He's a lost masculine, but he's lost in the sense of the rural divide, urban divide. There is a certain kind of a displacement there's a kind of a dismemberment, there's a kind of somebody who is, so when you look such as, when you look at this kind of man, he falls, he comes from a certain sense of biopsychosocial sphere. You know, his biography is imprinted on his biology. You know, his body itself is sort of kind of broken in that sense, but you don't notice these men. Like when you're in a city, when a sudden a rural thing comes, and you don't necessarily you know, you don't necessarily notice it. But early Hindi in early Hindi cinema, like Do Bika Zameen, Bimal Roy's film, sort of took this man as a hero, played by Balraj Sahni, where you see the land settlements had created these rural displacement. You notice the rural displacement in 2020 when so many of them walked back, the migrant neighbors, to their villages. That's when you notice that the city had so many of them, you know. I mean, I think, and this has been happening for many years now, that a rural displaced man is coming, you know, is coming to the city, and he carries that. Now, interestingly, when he returns back, the great return, what does his body show? What has his body sort of, what has the city imprinted on the body? And that's very interesting to know. So the body is like a vehicle. And in that sense, it's just interesting to look at the Sanskrit word for actors. It's called patra, which means a vehicle. And not like the actor is translated as a vehicle, as a vessel. So the body is a vessel on which the imprints has happened, whether it's illness, whether it's despair, whether it's hope, whether it's painful experiences. It carries the habitus, the habit on the body. So you can see the man is displaced. Is he freshly displaced? I don't know. Whether he still is in a displacement, whether he's just moving between the city, but he carries a nostalgia, he carries a reminiscence of what it is to be rooted. This is something the body shows here, especially when you look at the wife or look at the woman next to him. I don't know whether it's a wife or not or whatever it is, but she's subdued. You can see through the blurredness that her eyes are gazed downward, and she's something behind and the man is forward. So here also you see a certain kind of a gender divide, but you see also the dismemberment of the man. Okay, the next slide, please. All right, this is a very interesting image. It's of course the people who know classical images, the Hindustani classical. This is Ustad Bismillah Khan and the Shehnai maestro. And if you look at him, he is very. This is a very powerful and interesting image of a man who's obviously a culturally confident man. You know, there is a certain sense of culture in him. If you didn't know he was the Shehnai maestro, what would you see in him? You know, you would see a certain sense of well-being. You would see the person has accomplished something, because the face is so interesting. The face has got this amazing smile, an amazing Nurani, lit up face. You know, the cigarette held with a certain panache, a certain relaxedness in his body. You know, a certain kind of the way the shoes are, where the cup is. You know that he sits in this posture often. It's in a certain kind of a bent forward, ready for a conversation, ready to engage with you. So I call it the vintage man, because for me, it's an old sort of a thing from an old India. The old India, which, you know, that often people call it the old India, the new India, you know, and this is the old India for me. The India which understood the wisdom of what it is to be integrated between the spirit of the object. The Shehnai is not just a instrument, but also has a sacredness to it, has a certain spiritual flair to it, and you can see in his aura and energy. If you put this man in France, he will be equally culturally confident. His body sits with him. He sits in his body. He's comfortable in his skin. And I think the relaxedness says a lot of things, and the simplicity of it all, and yet there is so much beauty, you know. But of course, you can see many more things. I mean, I'm just saying, looking at this man, not knowing how famous he is, and how well loved he was, you know. And I think without knowing any of that, you can see that he's someone who's approachable. He's someone who his body shows that he's ready to embrace you, you know. And I think this is a very interesting thing of reading bodies, you know, because as an anthropologist, as a theater person, as a therapist, What my work is to see how I look at the person and what is the person telling me about. Is it a unified body? Is it a disembodied? Is it dismembered? Is it disconnected? You know, what does the person say? However brilliant you are, your body will not lie. How clever you are, the body will not lie. So what kind of man is he? So I like to ask this question again. What kind of man do you see him as? And what kind of men do you see? So this is the question I want to put in there. Every image you see, when you look at men and masculinity, you ask this question, so what kind of a man is he? What kind of manhood does he embody? you know he doesn't, like, this man does not look like he's going to take if you notice him, he doesn't have his Chennai with him, but you know it, that he is somebody who carries something which is precious, which has made him so comfortable the way he is, you know which has made him culturally confident, which has made him that he's not displaced, he's installed. He's in, so as opposed to the other image where you see a displacement, dismemberment, you know a hole in the man in the hole. Here you see somebody who is very much in his own elements. I mean, if you ever watch a baul performance in France, the baul singers do not stop being baul because they are in France. They are just baul wherever they are. In fact, called Baul Sphere by Mumlu Sen. So the first performance she saw of this particular Baul later on, he was picking his nose in a performance in France, and the French public, they were laughing because they thought this was part of the performance, but he was just picking his nose on stage. And I think this is very interesting to see the cultural confidence that you can be who you are wherever you are. The environment doesn't necessarily shape you. You just slip in, and that's the aesthetic man, the man who is comfortable with his aesthete, with his artistic veneer, with his cultural confidence. The next step, slide please. So keeping the same sort of a veneer, moving to another kind of a man, and I like you to look here. The man is with his instrument. Here the man is with his when I say man with his instrument, I mean what he's playing right now. And so I mean, he's holding the flute. If you look at his body, look at the entire visual, it's so classical. It's so like enshrined in a certain thing which says, this has to be Indian. You go into this Indian mode when you look at it, because he's not holding a Western flute, he's holding a wooden flute. He's playing Krishna. He's playing the embodiment of Krishna here. And you can see the Krishna there on the side. You can see a little suitcase there. You can see this lovely scenery which is painted behind. Even though it's black and white, you can see the pashmina shawl on his legs, not on his shoulder, which obviously means that he must have had his around his shoulder, and then he must have folded it neatly on his legs, and then he must have taken this posture, and he's playing quite immersed. When you look at this, you get a sense of sthirata, a centeredness, and that's the classical man. He's not drugs, rock and roll. The Indian classical man is a centered man. He's in Shantam Bhava. He's in the piece which holds all the rasas together. He can move you because he's in the center. He can take you into Rag Bhairavi. He can take you into Rag, Desa. He can take you any of the rags in a sense, because he has found the center. Here you see the sacredness and the aesthete merge and combine together to form the spinal cord, and the posture very centered, very classical, very orchestrated, and has a certain kind of a language which speaks to you immediately, that you want to listen, because he makes you listen. He makes you go inward. He makes you, he arrests you, because with his centeredness. He's not dancing on the stage in this wild Dionysian way. He is Krishna, who was also a warrior, but now he is the aesthete, the classical, the artistic, the divine, the sacred, and all of that. Yeah. So you see, this is how this particular man is embodied in his body when he holds the flute and he holds himself in his spine. Okay, the next slide, please. All right, this is a very powerful image again. I call it the man holding the collective narrative, and of course, everybody knows him, especially those who come from Bombay. He's the maestro, he's the don, everything else. And I look at his body, for example. You know, like, don't look at the background right now. We'll look at the background also, but look at his body. He's not a macho man. He doesn't have muscles like Salman Khan, you know. But look at his posture. Look at the way he's holding his cigar. Look at the way his hand is. Yeah, that's right. So there is a discipline to it. But yeah, we'll come. That's right. Correct. Thank you, Vidhi. So you will also have your own understanding when these images talk to you, and which I'm very much happy for you to bring out the glossary of how you see these images. So look at Bal Thackeray and look at this particular man. I mean, in a sense, look at his body. Look at the way his right hand is placed. Look at the way his posturing is there. He's an old man. You can knock him on the with a sock on the street, but I don't think that's ever possible or ever has been possible, because he commands an army. But more than that, he commands a narrative. He commands the collective narrative. He holds the collective narrative of all the Marathas right from the time Chhatrapati Shivaji sort of fought the Mughals. He holds the narrative. And that power of holding a narrative informs his body. You know, he holds his body, and look at the smoke, look at the haze, look at the malas. His face is that of an intellectual. You know, he holds big glasses. He's got a benign smile. He's almost looking like I mean, he was a cartoonist by profession, and so the cartoonist who holds the collective narrative. That's very interesting. You know, and the kind of masculinity can he evoke? So his body is not evoking the masculinity. What is behind him? Shivaji's body is holding the masculinity. It is the macho-ness, the warrior of the ancient past. It's the camouflage, the great warrior who decided to carve out an empire where within the huge Rashtra of India, India's Rashtra, you have a Maharashtra. You have a great nation within a nation, you know, and he is the holder of the Maharashtra, you know, the great nation. And the tiger is there, which is at the forefront, which is also this, like, I am the tiger. I am Shivaji's tiger. I am the embodiment and a representative of this powerful narrative, which embodies a certain nation, a certain people, a certain kind. So it doesn't matter if I don't look macho. It doesn't matter if I don't wield a sword. I'm wielding a cigar, and that is enough. I am the smoke and the dust. I can create a city of smoke and dust. I mean, make a city into smoke and dust. I mean, no one in Bombay during 1992, 1993, when I was there, when Bombay became Mumbai, could anyone, like when the Shiv Sena called a strike, everyone shut their shutters, because one stone would break the glass shatter and would cause a lot of loss. So even church gates shut down, you know, which normally would not shut down when the Shiv Sena would call a strike. You know, I think this man had wielded enormous power beforehand, and that is because of the collective narrative. So the collective narrative here is embodied in the body, in the posture, not necessarily the physical body and the muscles and all of that. Okay, so this is a very powerful image to remember. And as you can see, all these images are juxtaposed to each other as we go along. So remember them in a collage, not in a linear way. Yeah. Next slide, please, Sadaf. Thank you. Okay, this is the defiant masculine. It's a very beautiful image. I call it the defiant masculine because you normally don't expect men or boys in a traditional way to bulge their eyes out in the way the body is held. These are young boys as such, and they're ramrod straight again, and they're learning a certain abhinaya of the Kathakali technique. And I call it the defiant masculine because there is a warriorship to here. You know, the word Nataraja essentially comes from the word Nata, which means not Natya, but means Nata, which means war. So the word Natya essentially derives from the word nata, which the war itself, or warriorhood itself, becomes the art. You know, these men out here are defying the protocols of society of saying that men cannot dance, you know, or men cannot do all these things. They're saying we are warriors, we are holding this eye, and this is a certain kind of a raudra thing, which is one of the rasas, I think, of a certain kind of an enhancement of the eyes, and the way the bodies are, it's very defiant. It is showing the fieriness. It is showing the raudra roop, you know, Shiva in a focused rage. I mean, I can assume it. I'm not so, whatever little bit I know of dance, I think this is it. But it could be many, many bhavas or many, many things with the abhinaya. The face is not a static stoic face of the British colonizers. It is a mobile face. It's a face which moves. It's a face which evokes. There is a Sanskrit word uddipan. It is evocative. You know, it evokes a response. It sort of brings up certain kind of emotions when you look at this face. So it is not the static face, the non-stationary face which the white Anglo-Saxon Protestants have often sort of seen in Anglo-Indian schools. You know, this is a face which sort of rouses up an emotion, a feeling, and the body is again very still. Again, the idea of the aesthetic man, in a sense, if you look at it, it's Ramrod Sthira. There is a sthita to this. There's a centeredness to it, and from that centeredness, there comes the other rasas. So Shantam Bhav, the centered Bhav, is bringing up the other rasas as such. You know, we talked about the Shantam Bhav, Shantam Rasa, in a sense, with I think with Hari Prasad Chaurasia's flute position,
Yeah.
how that sort of remains there through the body, and the face is invoking something else. You know, here's not the person who's off the balance. This holds it, evokes something. So this is the defiant masculine. And if you notice this is very different from the man who holds a collective power. Of course, you can say he's also defiant, but here you see this guy doesn't have these boys don't have anything else. They just have their bodies and they just have their face. That itself brings about a feeling within ourselves. Okay, the next one, please. And this is a very interesting one, which I call the innocent man, or the innocent man easily can become the contaminated man. You know, a man who can be contaminated, and look at the way he holds his neck. It's almost like he shows his jugular veins. It almost also becomes the innocent man in a city can also become the prey because there are predators around. His face has a sense of longing, a held up, certain melancholia, a certain skinniness, you know, which is very different from, say, the masculine macho image of a man. He's the man who can be bullied, who can be pushed around, who's probably, he's in the next scene, probably in a film, his money will be stolen, you know, or he will be pushed into becoming corrupted by the city, corrupted by where he's coming from. You know, so I feel the innocent man is a very interesting thing because you see that kind of thing in many old black and white Hindi films where this innocent man comes and experiences the defiling nature of the city, you know, experiences something which turns him from this into, say, the toxic masculine. So this is the three stage of the toxic masculine. You see, this is this is the stage when boys who haven't been bullied, you know, the boys who haven't been experienced the toxic masculine like an imprint before they have been cheated or viled and told, given this worldview that the world is a rotten place, you know, and in order to deal with this rottenness, you have to be a thruster, you have to be conniving, manipulative, and so this is the stage. This is the stage before he's traumatized. And the world awards, the society awards a traumatized man, awards the manipulative man, awards the man who is holding the collective narrative. The society awards those who are in power, oppressing other people. This man will also call me the weakling. His innocence, his purity is looked down upon, you know, and often I find it very interesting, this image, because I think this is all what most of the students, when I see them young, many of them are like this. You know, before they enter into the football coach's life, before the coaches get them, before the headmasters get them, before the brutalizing father gets them, before they watch their mothers get beaten, they get them. This is the innocent man. This is the uncorrupted man in his face. But look at the jugular veins, and that's very telling. Okay, then next slide, please. Okay, I can't see the image here.
Yeah, neither can I. Let me see if I can reshare. The image cannot be displayed. Okay, let me download it again.
Yeah, well, I can just talk about the crowd or the mob. The image here about the crowd and the mob is about the Kumbh Mela, an image which is basically like a lot of men gathering together. I find that in a very interesting country like ours, where homosexual cases are so clearly defined, you know, especially in North India, you only see men mostly. And men in massive clusters or in rallies or other things like that. And especially for a religious gathering, you see the crowd. Who is this male crowd? The faceless, the nameless crowd, which can easily become the mob, which can easily become a directionless, fickle mob, which can attack anybody. So I think they can already be, you can move from the discipline of the crowd moving in a certain way to that of a stampede, you know. So how does this turn into this thing? What is the nature of men to become crowds? What is the nature of masculinity to become a mob? Because the question is, that is when the toxic masculinity, post the defiling of the innocent man, becomes a collective. And this is exactly what is ruling our country now, or the subcontinent, with various dictators, with various things. It rules the collective narrative. Has the collective narrative of men have become a sort of a herd, which is defined and which is controlled by a remote control. A remote control which says, all of you move to the right direction now with a speaker. All of you move to the left direction now, and they all move. So this is the crowd of the undead. This is the Night's Watch undead. Everybody has become one. Once you're infected by toxic masculinity, once you're infected by the collective narrative, power goes where the collective narrative is. Once the man holds the power, he's got the remote control. The cigar is his remote control. He waves something, the crowd will follow. So I'll say, we must establish ourselves as Hindus or whatever it is. So please go to the river and take a bath. Despite the fact that viruses are on, they will go. Because the announcement has been given, or they're not stopped. Which is very simple. If you go to Kashmiri Gate, this is even before the BJP came to power or before all of this started. The police has been like this forever. When they have these announcements, and I heard this announcement in Kashmiri Gate in Delhi, and those who understand Hindi, I will say it. I mean, those who I don't know who are not here, who can't understand Hindi, but there's a word, it's very significant. The police was saying, when I was taking the metro, they said, "Jo line pe nahi khade honge, unko khoob pitai hogi." Now, in a democratic country, the police is blaring on the sort of the microphone that if you stand in line, you would get beaten. And if you look at this image now, imagine if this image runs into a stampede, and many have died in the Kumbh and gone. I don't know whether they went for salvation or not, whether they had moksha or not, but they definitely had their end there, and that is what they came for. Not for the holy dip, but to actually be, actually to have the demise by stampede. And this is the kind of death I definitely do not want. The nature, because if you look at it, it's a very it's very dangerously situated. The stampede can easily be possible if there is any lack of discipline here. And this kind of a claustrophobia, enmeshment, is the nature of toxic masculinity, which lends into such kind of a mass behavior. Easily become violent, at one go.
Mm.
It's almost pending, almost becoming, and this is validated. This is this kind, and I'm not talking about just like because it's Hindu or any sort of a mass gathering of such kind.
Mm.
The crowd can become the mob, and because the element of toxicity is there in the very nature of it, because they're enmeshed, because there is no, the center is not being held, you know, the voice, the locus of control is not them, but somebody else, the narrative, the power, the one who holds the remote control,
Mm.
you know. And I find religious gatherings extremely, extremely violent because the possibilities of violence is very much there. And unlike you see the individual, the spiritual, the held man,
Mm.
this sort of larger sort of space
Mm.
uh, is where the innocence has gone, you know.
Mm. What do you feel about this thing? What the yearly Makkah Hajj? That's also like a huge gathering.
All of
Mm.
this we hold the minds of other people. See, violence is not just about physical violence,
Mm.
it's also the judgment of who's in and who's out,
Yeah.
who's in this crowd, who's not in this crowd,
Mm.
who's going in and who's not going in. You know, any sort of possession, any
Mm.
sort of marking
Mm.
itself can become violent anytime, unless until,
Mm.
and as we will look at the alternative man, as and we look at it, and as long as who holds the power is very important here, you know, who holds the collective narrative, the power, who is a representative of this, you know.
Mm. Yeah.
I think the fact is that uh, see, as somebody who the collective essentially is an enmeshed, entangled space.
Mm.
It's not, it can become very peaceful,
Mm.
but again, who holds the collective narrative, who holds the power, it all depends on that,
Mm.
because these guys have surrendered themselves to something larger, and the larger can be anything.
Mm.
And that's
Yeah.
why in this country they say, if the masses are with us, then we will
Mm.
rule. But
Mm.
then yeah, and therefore there is a disembodied displacement, completely so. This is like
Mm.
massive rural thing and dismod, because they're all enmeshed and entangled.
Mm.
There's no individuation here. There is no autonomy here, you know. And these will go for the ones who's the other. They
Mm.
will go for that is who's in and who's out, totally, you know. Like if you go towards a Hajj and somebody does something which is sacrilege,
Mm.
the mob is going to go wild. They're not going to be tolerant about it at all.
Mm. Mm.
I mean, the crowd will become the mob, rather. The
Yeah.
crowd will not
Yeah.
become, because it's faceless.
Mm.
Because
Yeah.
it is like it is the undead here.
Mm.
The trauma has become they're hugely traumatized people here. We don't see that, but they are
Mm.
traumatized totally.
Mm.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
We will take questions as we go along further.
In that case, there is somebody who has asked something.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, I can't see the chat, so I'll have to minimize the
yeah.
share and
We
tell
can
you the
we
question.
can talk about this as we go along. And let's go to the next slide.
Yeah,
And
sure.
you will understand why I've placed the way the sequences have been placed. Yeah, look at the pseudo-religious man here, and look what is written here on the side.
Mm.
I can't read it because all of you guys are here on this particular thing, but you can read, if you can read what's written.
Mm.
uh,
Should I
it,
read it?
yeah, can you read it, please?
Yeah, yeah. Great care of all sorts of diseases without medicine or troubles and pains which may be ailing you. If you are overcome by jadoo or bhoot palit, if you are out of employment and business goes slack and not showing any profit, children do not live. That's where it gets cut off.
Yeah, so look at the information, the power that these men hold. And supposing this is an image there in the Kumbh around, I'm sure this is there, and so many people come. This is the time for great power wielding, because this man again is not macho or masculine. Look at the way their legs are crossed in a stereotypical way. uh, uh, Okay, we'll take these questions later on. I'm getting distracted by them. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, we'll take all this later on. I
yeah.
mean, we can look at the what ifs and
Yeah, yeah. I'll put it together for us.
look at this man, the way the way that the hands where the hand is held, they're holding the beedies, this little cigarette sort of a thingy or whatever, the beedies. They're holding it again. They're holding with a great panache. There's a great style to it. There is a certain kind of a sophistication to it. It hardly looks anything which is toxic or masculine in that sense of the way, but they're holding great power. Look at this man's in the forefront, the way his expression is. Look at his eyes. Look at the kind of contempt, a certain kind of a superiority, a certain kind of arrogance he holds, if nothing else, because he has the
Yeah.
knowledge. He holds the knowledge in a certain way. He's a wielder of the knowledge in a certain way, you know. And the other man is obviously not so much in power, but he's supporting him in that sense. Maybe, I mean, I don't know, because he's not terribly clothed. But this guy is wearing his dhoti, his kurta, he's well clothed. So in the sense, he's waiting for the customers to come. And why do I call it the pseudo-religious man? Is that religion has a certain falseness to it of tall claims, that it can claim that it can take care of everything, which is very much more like a marketing guru would do. You know, you come to my cult, you come to my faith, you are given the ticket to moksha. You're given the ticket to liberation. आपको जन्नत हासिल है, whether it's a Hindu or whether it's a Muslim or whether it's a rabbi or whatever it is. The false claim of the religious man, the pseudo-religious man, is that my path is the best, and there lies the toxicity. There lies a certain kind of, which is very subtle because they're dressed in such a beautiful garb. They're marketing. So from here to the guru, that's why I've not placed the guru's photograph or the, from the variety of gurus in a sense we have in our country, I've not placed it here because this represents that at the core level. It says that you follow this, it's a guarantee that your well-being is guaranteed, and I think we all are in danger of doing that, because we all want to market our wares in such a way that it is foolproof, because we want maximum client. Look at this guy. He holds a whole crowd there who will come to him sooner or later. How much money is he going to make there? So here you see the guru or the pseudo, the witch doctor in the transactional world, in the Kali Yuga of transactional world. These guys have a huge power and huge toxic claim of their own, like I used to go to, I read the tarot cards, so I used to go to this psychic fair. I was very interested. There were 100 tarot cards there, 100 tarot card readers, 100 crystal readers, 100 palmists, 100, all of them, and each one ready to sell their ware. I was a fascinating anthropology. I mean, I did this also because I just wanted to see what the experience is like. I mean, I wanted to watch and observe people in their shop selling subtle medicine or subtle craft of power of destiny. And one astrologer told me, what is the greatest magic is not astrology, not anything else, but the power of words. And I thought that was a very wise thing he would say. He said, the good astrologer or the good tarot reader or anybody else is like a politician, is like anyone else who has a wonderful command over words. Words are magic. Words have a power over you. And I thought that was amazing. I mean, there was a nugget of wisdom thrown at me, almost deconstructing his art, almost deconstructing his astrology, saying that, look, this is not what the power is. Not that I can see. The structure, the yantra is not it. It's my words. It's how I say it, And I hold it very dear to my heart. I think that was the gift which I got, I mean, the idea that the words are magical. Words are actually incantation which actually holds you. So these guys have the words, beautiful Sanskritized words, lovely words, amazing, amazing charm, amazing sort of a wielding power. And this is where the toxicity lies, the power over. Okay, the next slide.
Vikram, just a quick check. We're almost at 3. I think you're asking me to remind you if that happens.
Please, thank you.
Yeah.
I was almost going to ask you, like, okay, I'm going to be quick about this. I get carried away. Okay, I'm going to be short, quick here. The belly of a man. There's a lot to talk about, so I can get carried away by one image, It's a lot to say, and I don't know whether it interests all of you or not, but I can go on and on. Uh, so all of this caste thing, as I talked about, lower caste, and we've gone to the merchant community. We've looked at the classical man. Even Ustad Bismillah Khan is also a Brahmin. If you look at it, it's all the upper casteness in him. You know, you look at the Brahmin. This thing, you look at the Brahmin and the artist. The Brahmin. Now we come to we are also moving to the belly, the Vaishya, the merchant. And if you look at this guy, he's got an amazing confidence to it. He has no, you can't fat shame him. You can't body shame this man. No way. Look at his where he carries. His power lies in his belly. You know, his belly speaks, and the kind of confidence he has, the way his legs are crossed, he doesn't care if he's. I don't think he ever went through teasing in his life about being fat. You know, a fat boy who comes from the same lineage, who goes and travels, who studies in a rich Jain school in Delhi, would be ashamed of his belly. But not this man. And these photographs have been taken during 47 to 48 to 49, 1950. This is post-independent era photographs. And I think this is Henri Cartier-Bresson's photographs. Look at the man's belly. What does it tell you? The merchant community is the community in power. It's not Mr. Modi, it's the Ambanis. It is the merchant. It's the one who sells the ware. You know, even if he sells the ware, like, I mean, you know, the greatest of greatest oil merchants and everybody who are really rich down the line in the last 70 years, the one who started 70 years ago, they probably were like this. Big industrialists started off their wares on the streets like this. But they know it's a transactional world. They are patient. The belly is patient. The belly will swallow you. You will be all in the belly one day. This is a merchant's world. This is Kali Yuga is / the merchant's world. Everything is sold. Even the red fort can be sold. You know, so we are in the belly of the whale. We are in the belly of the merchant, and this is the very powerful masculine prototype. You know, the belly. Yeah. Okay. Then next one, please. Okay, this is this is my favorite. I love it. The colonizer with the colonized man with the colonized. I think this is fantastic because you see when you look at Lord Mountbatten, who's the last viceroy, you see his face moving away. You see Edwina's face, which is smiling and laughing, but also not looking at Pandit Nehru here. The first prime minister's face is bent, is laughing, is looking towards. If you notice the body, I showed it to many people over the years, and they said, "Oh my God, he looks like a servant there," and that's exactly what it is. It is the servile and the served. It is the colonizer and the colonized. And this is our relationship till today. You know, however much Mr. Modi sort of criticizes the first prime minister, he is the colonized. You know, the kind of the structure. Even though a building is made on top of a building, even if you break the building down, the fact that you spend so much of time to welcome Trump itself shows that you are colonized. And I think this is a very important aspect to understand, that we are bent by the weight of the colonizers. And we are laughing, we are humoring, we are sort of seducing. And the feminine aspect of the colonized is the one who's responding to him. But she's not looking into his eyes. She's still looking away, but you know she's interested in him or interested in what he's saying. Whereas mildly amused, the viceroy turns away. He's looking at what he's leaving behind. You know, the pillars are very interesting. The pillars which hold the power of the British Empire is being left behind. This is the cover of the book called Indian Summer, which is a fantastic book on the leaving of the British Empire and moving away. This image is there on the front cover of the book, The Indian Summer. I have often looked at it as a very powerful image of a relationship of modern India, you know, of the dams, of the social construction, the socialism, the internalized Macaulay system, the structures, everything the colonized man, the intimate enemy, does. So even if Mr. Nehru is wearing Indian clothes, his body is completely turned towards a certain kind of a servility of being servile. You know, this leads to other men, which I've not said. And there's a photograph which is next would come where Indira Gandhi was there with the back and with all the men around her in the cabinet. She was calling only the man, the only one man the man with the trousers, or the only man in the cabinet, in a sense, like she was called something like that, where the only man in a sari or something like that, where all the men are standing behind. I think this was the next image which I haven't placed here, which I sort of misplaced. Very interestingly, she shows what muffled men became, which was the next slide, called the muffled man. The colonized man leads to the muffled man. The colonized man leads to the aspect of where your voice is taken off. You have amnesia. You don't know who you are. In a way, you're also displaced and dismembered because your neck has gone down with shame, with servility, because your leaders have sold out. Your representation of power has sold out. Your power has gone. And when these muffled men, when their power has gone, what do they do to their women is my question. What is their relationship with women when their language and their voice has gone away? Okay, the next slide, please. So this is the erotic brotherhood. It's a very different kind of slide from a masculine image in a sense, and a very powerful image again of the way the doors open and you see these men sort of in this sort of intimacy, and it's not violent at all. It's very sensual. So why I call it erotic brotherhood is because there's a longing of contact. The skin contact here is not violent, is not toxic at all. Because here you are given a permission within the masculine frame, and these are traditional ways, within the masculine phase to relate and connect each other with the somatic, with the body itself. So the body here becomes a body of longing. Here the body becomes the erotic, and this is not, they're not sexual with each other, they're not boinking each other. This is a place where there's the skin hunger, or the skin element is contacting with each other with the sand. It's very elemental here. You know, it is not visceral, it is erotic, it is elemental here. In fact, this takes care of the toxic element. In fact, this is an antidote to the toxic element. This is not enmeshment, this is interconnection, that interlinkage. The way the hand is held on the neck, the nape, it's not a vicious grip, but a sense of inclusivity. I include you in this tussle, which is play. The akhada is a play, is where play takes place. The play of longing, the lila between men. You know, here you are safe to express your physicality without a certain kind of a label. So I call it the erotic brotherhood, not a bromance or something like that, which is a normal sort of newfangled word, but a brotherhood, because there's a fellowship to it. The akhara is a container. It holds it. Therefore, there's a doorway, there's a certain membership, there is a certain fellowship of a certain, and this has been traditionally there for, and still there, as an aspect of a kinship among men. The next slide, please. Okay, this is the displaced urban man. As you can, this is a very interesting photograph taken from a film, I think. If you look at this man, for example, he's extremely uncomfortable, but look at the other men. They're all like, you know, like programmed as robots. They all look the same. And this is something which always encounter when anyone who works in a corporate sort of space. Like when I started working with a corporate, even though I was doing experiential learning in Magic Pass, I was told you must cut your hair. And for me, it was like Samson being asked to cut my hair, because I thought my hair actually holds magical powers. This is just my own little silly or whatever boyish thing to myself. But I was asked to cut my hair and wear a certain glasses, wear these shirts and everything else, and go and sell and go to Goldman Sachs. I think it was one of the most torturous experiences of my life, and one of the most inauthentic spaces I've been. And I became truly displaced. Because here, if you look at this guy, he's absolutely lost. But he's lost in a very different way from the rural displaced man. because he's like a slot machine where the coin has been slotted in and he's in a slot machine. And that's the urban displaced man. He's slotted in, but here he doesn't fit in. You clearly know he doesn't fit in. That's why his clothes are a little different. And I think I identify with this a lot, because I think when I lived in Bombay most of my work, I used to feel extremely displaced, you know. And the urban displaced man has his own tragedy, his own pathos, even though he wears the marks of his class, that this guy is from an upper class, he probably speaks English, he doesn't fit in. He doesn't know where he's going. He doesn't know whether the amount of money he will earn will give him happiness. Will he become like the rest of these men, stoic, without any sort of smile, any sort of joy, any sort of longing? Now, if you look at his face, is he innocent? Well, I think he's the next stage after the innocent man, because I think there are variations from the innocent to the contaminated. I think there are variations. I think all these are shades. And you see the innocence, but you also see the deep, look at the way the face is tilted up. Doesn't have his jugular veins out. He's almost looks like he's going up the vertical. Lost, yes. There is a certain kind of a verticalness. He's on the rise, but he doesn't know where he's going. The verticalness, the slot machine. It's upward, linear, to the top. What is there on the top? Isn't it a very lonely place? He's wondering, perhaps, in his subconscious. Okay, the next slide, please. Okay, this again goes back to the street, the broken man. If you see the woman next to him sitting, she's far more together than the man here. This you often see the homeless, the homeless world. This is the completely collapsed man, the traumatized man. And look at the jugular veins here. He's probably been eaten, vampirized out. There is no way that he's ever going to be reinstated. I saw lots of it when I worked in the beggar's home. Lots and lots in Mankur in Bombay when I worked in the beggar's home. So much of my social work life with the homeless has been watching these kind of men, where the possibilities of resurrection, the possibilities of ever being okay, ever being centered, is definitely not there. This kind of men you do not even think as men. He's also the emasculated man, the broken man, the broken at many places, and the body is broken in many places, the barefootness. It's a horrible sense of, and if you look at the woman next to her, she's on the floor, but there is a certain dignity in her. You know, she's still holding, she's got a support behind her. She knows where to ground herself. Whereas this man is a dangling man. You know, he's left between the otherworldliness. There is an undead aspect of this. This man will not fit in any of the categories we have talked about now. He can't fit in anywhere there. You know, he's too broken to fit in anywhere. His only place is the street. The street will consume him eventually. The street is his space. There's nowhere else can he ever be. And this is not the man we normally think as a stereotypical understanding of a man. But he's a man too, a broken man. The next slide, please. Okay, this is the skilled man, and we look at the artisan craftsman. The artisan craftsman, again, look at the body, look at the habitus. The body again has a certain kind of spinal cord to it, a certain kind of a firmness to it, but it has a certain kind of a skill being in the fingers. The habitus that is being formed here is, we might not wear clothes of richness, but we have it in our fingertips. We have it in our fingers. And here the artisan, the craftsman, also a dying breed in our country, a lot of that. But the power lies in the instrument, the power lies in the skills. When I worked in Kashmir recently, many of the children I worked in interior of Kashmir, they come from families of very skilled laborers. They were the part of the unlettered class in a sense, and now of course they're lettered and everything else. But when they draw, when they paint, the karigari is so immense. The color schemes are so beautiful. Kashmiri children in the rural Kashmir are one of the most amazing things I've seen, a very skilled one with their hands. Because paper mache, sculpting, or many other things which are not there so much, traditionally are in their bodies, in their genes. So if there is transgenerational trauma, there is transgenerational gifts also. And I think that should not be excluded when you come from a generation of skilled people. There is a transgenerational skilledness which is there in the hands. So if you want to do drama therapy, art therapy, or craft work, or anything else within Kashmir, in a sense, you will find talent. You will find skilled. You will find an artisans coming up. Okay.
Sorry,
Thanks.
sorry.
No, it's all right. I think it's
Yeah.
really a cue for me to continue. Because
Okay.
yeah. So yeah, and I think that when you look at this particular image, I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted by the words. So there is this. You see this man here. It's a very different image from the broken man, the other men, and whatever it is. Here, the body, like when you see naked men bodies, in a sense, the body set. Here, the body is very fine. It's almost like I'm now all right to be objectified. When I call a sexually liberated man, I'm using this in irony, because it's not really liberated. It is like I'm ready to be objectified. So I'm ready, like the female counterpart. I can now sell soaps. I can now sell aftershaves. I can now sell shirting, suiting, or whatever it is. This kind of advertisement or this kind of imagery did not come early in the 1940s, 50s, or 60s advertisement when women's bodies were still used. This particular thing of the Indian man being clean shaven, between toned bodies, showing his nipples, showing his the way his hand is, showing. Now again, you see the jugular veins to some extent shown, but here there is a this is the urban man who's got lost in the dream. He's got lost in the promise of that he's going to get paradise. He's going to get, his body is going to give him all what he wants. This is the man who's been seduced by uh, Mephistopheles, like seduced by Mephisto, saying, "Come into the consumer world. Your body is also meant for consumption." The sexually liberated man is also the yeah. I think so. Yeah, he's sort of becoming very open to the idea that I am ready to be sold in the market. His body is to be objectified. His body is, and there is no shame in it here, because so it's very different from the defiant man body, very different from the erotic brotherhood, where you all see the skins of other men. It's a very different kind of a skin here in display. On display. Okay, the next one, please. Okay, this is the transcending man. This is a very famous photograph by Dayanita Singh on a series of photographs on Mona Singh Ahmed, transcend Hijra in a sense, and she sort of photographed this person's over many years. I would like to call it the transcending man, because the lines between the masculine and the feminine have blurred. It's not transgender, this is also transcending. There's a certain kind of a way that I want to push the blur boundaries. I'm a man who dresses in women's clothes. I'm a man who holds up a baby. I'm a man who's not a man, and yet a woman, and yet everything together. The liminal, the all-inclusive, the stigmatized. The hijrah, the Prophet said, were the sacred people. So the word hijrah means sacredness. And that's why before the British came and the colonized happened, before the suited, booted masculinity of Lord Mountbatten took over, as the short hair, the wearing of the uniformed man, the corporate man, and all of that militarized man is the hijrah, who were very close to the kings, the emperors, who were the guardians of the harems, who were the companions of the queens, who were in Pakistan they're called actually in India they were also called they're called the Khwaja Sira. The Khwaja is the prophet or the master, spiritual master, and Sira means secret. Those are secrets of the Khwaja, which also means the whisperers. They were the whisperers, the one who held the gossip. They held the courtiers, where the power, they knew where power resided. And therefore, they had the power to bless and to curse. Another kind of man, the transcending man. The next one, please. This is very powerful again, not because he's Gandhi, but because this is opposed to Lord Mountbatten, the colonized man. The alternative man gives an alternative to the British Empire and says, the masculine which thrusts, the masculine which has a suit, boot, and everything else, I'll wear the dress of a coolie, I'll become the naked fakir, I'll spin the spinning wheel, I'll become the alternative to this kind of masculinity. I will tell the rulers there is an alternative to this kind of a man too, especially if you're colonized. I will hold my nakedness with the dignity, and I will take the salt of the earth, namak, and I will turn it into something, a weapon. And I believe that whatever you criticize Gandhi in whatever ways, the fact that he brought such a challenge to the imperial prototype of colonized power, that even though the present prime minister can turn him into a janitor and call Swachh Bharat, I think he will always remain, the alternative to the image will hold the power that I can spin the wheel, I can be autonomous, I do not have to be displaced, because a lot of displacement of rural urban started then, during the British Empire, because of impoverishment. And he believed in the relocation of this of dignity, and the wearing nothing as such, hardly anything. I can spin my own clothes. So, and I do not have to be powerful by wearing a uniform. I'm shed of the uniform. So when he meets King George IV in England, he has the humor to say, well, you're wearing no clothes, Mr. Gandhi. And he's saying, well, Your Highness, you're wearing all the clothes for me. You're wearing more than me, So in a way, he answers back to the colonizer, they're saying, you've taken our clothes off. You're the one who's taken our clothes off. You're the one who's thrown us under the bus. We've not missed the bus. You've thrown us under the bus. And that's what Gandhi's alternative to that kind of masculinity is. It is in a way also like the defiant masculine, but it's also institutionalizing the masculine, the alternatives in a certain way. Okay, the next slide. Okay, this is the ecstatic man. This is where these two slides are that of my friend Ahmad Abbas, who is a photographer, who's done a lot of photography of Sufi also the sacred men. And this you see the solitary man, the whirling dervish, the kind of the shadowy, the inwardness, also the old man wearing the clothes, but it is into ecstasy. It's a kind of inner ecstasy. It's an inwardness, but an outwardness. There are other people watching this. The shadows are rising. There is some sort of upliftment. And this is another kind of man who doesn't need other men, as opposed to the crowd. It stands solitary and singularly and has his own inner journey. This is not versus Muslim versus Hindu here. This is also the sadhus, the one who are inwardly drawn, the one who do not necessarily will follow the crowd. They are called the Besharas or the Besharams, the one who do not follow the Shariat, and they're the one also called the intoxicants. They're the prototypes of the Kalandars and the ones who have gone inward, and they defy any sort of religious lines or any sort of lines. And therefore we start with lines and we're ending with, we're moving the end of the presentation with the blurring of the lines. And here the lines really go away, because this man in ecstasy, in intoxication, you do not see the lines which sort of divide or hold anything. Okay, the next one, please. This is my final image. I end with an Ahad Saab. This is Ahad Saab of Supor. This is the last of the naked men, Sufi saints. And if you see this woman holding the body here, a very different kind of way, I'm ending with another old naked man, but a very different old naked man. We move from impoverished naked men to a very rich naked man. He also wore pashminas. He also wore a lot of dignity. And someone can get offended by this image now with the Wahhabicization in Kashmir and other things like that. His life was in threat during militancy, because such kind of thing is considered kufra. It's considered like a sacrilege, and it's crazy. And he was a silent naked man, and therefore I call him the mystical man, where he's gone so inward, but he's gone into this non-dual aspect. So the nakedness is also Digambara, is also the sky clad. It's very much like a Jain saint or any other kind of Shaivite saint. He's completely, and if you look at the kind of, so here breaks the stereotype of what you think of Islam. And these all are all considered by Wahhabi Islam as aberrations. So you understand how powerfully this is also a defiant man. This is also the evocative man. This is also the divine eroticism. This is a sense of which lines have been blurred completely, where this woman with the abaya is holding her shoulder and she's receiving probably a solace, a message, probably has someone missing in her life. Something is missing. And he listens to all of them in silence. And miracles happen. The miraculous takes place. So this is a very powerful conduit. The last one of the lines. I don't know whether Kashmir has any more naked men now, but he was very modern in recent times. Passed away. So left his body. That is. It's a very powerful image. I feel very close to my heart, and I feel this sort of. I wanted to bring this out because it breaks the boundaries of stereotypes of Islam, stereotypes of men, stereotypes of nakedness, and also mysticism. All right, I end the. So let's go again. Last one. I'm just going to ask you this question: what kind of man do you want to be, or what kind of, for women, what kind of inner masculine do you have? What kind of men and masculinity do you encounter in your daily life? What are the ways to break the masculine stereotype? How do you deconstruct your own masculine prototype? How do you deconstruct yourself? And for women, this can be your inner masculine, if you can locate it. You know, I also wanted to talk about the macho-ness of the head man, the intellectual man, and the muffled man, the servile man, which I haven't included because it was getting too long. So I end the just the last one more slide to give you the credits for those photographs. The Raghu Rai, Henry Cartier-Bresson, Margaret Brooke, Dayanata Singh, and Raul Amarabas. These are my photographers who I have not taken permission because some of them are dead, some of them I don't know where it is. So I've just used those images because they were available in the line. And there you are, my presentation, and we can look at questions now.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
we can look at my work, but I think we can look at the questions now a little bit, and then I can relate it connect to my work. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. So I'll start the first question. Can we check this with the facilitator? What is their idea of masculinity? Seems limited to cis men so far. Would it be possible to make their position clear on this?
Well, I think I've used a transcending man, I think, in the middle. I deliberately did not want to use so much in terms of, I wanted to use more of the body as such, you know, and therefore not so much to look at, so if you look at all these images I've taken, they're not associated to sexual orientation so much, but to look at what the body is and how the body speaks. So there was, because I've seen a lot of presentation in terms of sexual orientation, other things like that, and I wanted to deliberately use. So Mona Ahmed's sort of a thing was there because she breaks the body of the body type, and therefore there's a transcending to it aspect to it. You know, the others have got. So I wanted to use more like caste, class, consumerism, and other sense of like urban, rural, many other kind of lines. So not look at so much. So there was a deliberate way of not wanting to look at sexual orientation only because I think we sort of ignore these aspects completely. I think these things are becoming very popular to talk about it, and I wanted to talk about those kind of masculine images where the body is looked at, the brokenness of the body, the reconstructing of the body, and essentially it was more of an embodiment. Because when I work as a drama therapist, I encounter these bodies, you know, the body of the ordinary daily life. So, yeah.
Yeah.
What is my? Can you repeat that question? I don't understand that question. What does it mean?
Yeah, I think they were talking about people who aren't born with male bodies but may identify as men. So I think they were kind of asking if that wasn't included for paucity of time.
I think the transcending man is the prototype of anything which breaks the line.
The
So
binary.
all those men. So in a sense, you're not born in the body of a man, but you identify with man. You will be a transcending man. Everything which is transgender, or this I call it the transcending man in my mind, because you are transcending the lines which is given to you.
Right.
So that's
Yeah.
what that means.
There are a few questions about the picture of the crowd. I think these are more like comments. I can only think of claustrophobia and a mob of disembodied people. And in the crowd is the insider who is an outsider and is clearly delineated. Yeah, and there's one question on the crowd picture, which is, what if it's a disciplined and well-structured crowd not gathered for religious belief? Maybe like a military march or something. Maybe that's what they mean.
So the thing is I've used the word crowd, or which can turn into a mob, and I've used a connection with the collective narrative. So the question is that I'm not saying that all crowds are toxic, but the thing is that there's a great chances why in certain gatherings you have a protection, and it's very interesting in what gatherings you bring a protection and what gatherings you don't bring a protection, who's
Yeah.
holding the collective narrative, who's holding the power to say now Shaheen Bagh will need protection there, whereas these men who are marching in, with motorbikes or whatever it is, and this particular thing will not need protection. Here the police just stands by itself. So I find it very interesting in a way, who defines the crowd which turns into a mob, because it all depends on who's holding the power.
Yeah, fair. Then there's a question on, are there shades of the innocent man too in the urban displaced man?
Yeah, there is that the shade is moving because the lift is moving, so there is a kind of a vertical movement. I think the innocent man has made a choice to consciously go or unconsciously be swept by the collective narrative,
Right.
and therefore it's slotted very irregularly in the collective narrative, as you can see the rest of the crowd, the one with the ties and everything else. It's sort of like,
Yeah.
all right, I will fit in, but I'll cut myself and fit in, like I'm Procustus, I'm dismembered there.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And I think to the same picture, there's a question / reflection of, he seems lost in thought, but you can also see stages of learning, like focusing, practicing, and being in your place.
Which one is this? What's the question?
I think this was a response to the image in the lift. I'm not sure.
Okay.
You can see stages of learning, focusing. I think the whole people behind that man had it looked. Yeah,
I'm so sorry. I think that I saw when the comments were coming in. I feel that came in for the skilled worker picture with the two men and the boy. I'm not sure, but I remember it coming on that picture.
Oh, right. The skilled workers were in a group of 3, so it seems like stages of learning. So focusing, practicing.
Right. Of course, and there's also, you see, the habitus is being formed. The child is there particularly because the child is watching and learning from his adults. So his body is getting habituated by a transfer of skills, which is that of by watching and learning in a very Pierre Bourdieu way. I'm unconsciously watching it,
Yeah, and I think to the sexually liberated one, we have a comment. I am ready to be viewed, scrutinized, objectified, and fantasized by the gaze.
Sorry, what is it?
I am ready to be viewed, scrutinized, objectified, and fantasized by the gaze.
That's right.
There's a question for the mystic man. Could the power also lie in his belly, like the way it lay for the merchant?
Well, when you first look at him, it's interesting what you look at. I mean, do you look at his belly? Do you look at his nakedness? Do you look at what is this? What do you spot first? Is actually where your answer lies. I'm not going to answer it for you. I'm going to see what your gaze looks at. Like, do you look at his penis? Do you look at his head? Do you look at the woman who's holding it? Do you look at the entire picture? For me, the belly of a man, in that sense, I looked at it only because the belly spoke to me, the first thing. Nothing else. So I think what you first spot in the picture also. So these are not absolute statements. In a photograph, what first strikes you is your visual of unity in your mind. That's where you are at, your gaze. So the photographer has framed it in a particular way, and you can pick up that from where your senses are located, and that will tell you what kind of man is he to you. I mean, for me, these are loose labels. You can deconstruct it even further. Yeah.
Yeah. So the next question is about how can this understanding help us in life and work, especially therapy work. So I think that can be the bridge where
Yeah.
you can
Absolutely.
talk about your. Yeah.
Okay. I think this is a great way to move into the next one.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is critical thinking.
Mm.
This is where I sort of design and understand, or when I'm stepping into the role of a therapist, in a sense, when a client group comes in, or when the children come in, I first look at the E aspect. So I use a paradigm called EPR, embodiment, projection, role play. And this is the embodiment aspect of how my inner lenses of us looking at uh, a client group which has come in.
Mm.
So how does the body speak to me?
Mm.
How does the body move?
Mm.
In what way is the body move? Because that's where my entry point is as a non-cognitive work, you
Right.
know. So when I work with, let's look at the work with transgendered men.
Mm.
You know, I mean, I think it's a very interesting thing because I haven't,
Mm.
yeah, by Sue Jennings, by
Mm.
Sue Jen, Sue Johnston.
Jennings, sorry. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, and that is the paradigm I work with in terms of. So when I look with transgendered communities, when I had started working with transgender communities, the transcending man as anything which is blurred boundary, or with anyone who do not follow under a gender prototype, there's a gender variance of any sort. You look at what the body is holding. Now, this is very interesting because the body itself has been questioned, and I said, do I identify with the body or not? And so I've transcended the lines. But you do have violence on the body. You do have low self-esteem on the body. You do wear caste and gender discrimination and stigma on the body. Stigma is a very important part. So when I'm working with stigmatized groups, how is the body speaking to me? What is the restoration, reparation, healing work required? Immediately speaks when the body comes in.
Mm.
So this way, when I'm doing role plays or
Mm.
working with narratives or collective narratives, it's very important to usher them towards authenticity, to touching feelings and way the body can be expressed, uh, say, in a non-linear way. So
Mm.
work with HIV/AIDS kind of work in a sense with transgendered men has always been write this formula, write this document, write this paper, write, and they used to get very flustered because they were from working class people. They never did much of writing. This was all Bengali in Calcutta. And when I said, okay, we're going to do something called dance on your behalf, where people will tell each other stories and you will dance your story. I mean, the listener will dance the story out back to play it back to the teller.
Mm.
The teller will be the witness to their own story being played back.
Mm.
You know, almost like
Mm.
a playback theater, but more like on your behalf. It's called on
Mm.
your behalf. And
Mm.
there was such a mirror neurons operative, where
Mm.
the neurons were operating with each other, and there was a synchronicity, and there was a feeling the body and the affect were speaking to each other with music and that through that simulation. And there was a
Mm.
lot of collective sharing of grief, which
Mm.
is called unkahi baate.
Mm.
The unspoken was spoken,
Mm.
and through the body, through the
Mm.
sharing, and then
Yeah.
do you resonate? And I
Mm.
think there was a lot of camaraderie which was built, a community was built. And a
Mm.
lot of healing takes place when the community becomes a witness of shared
Mm.
grief, shared
Mm.
pain. And here the body becomes resurrected, the body becomes restored, the body reworks its neuropathways, and a
Mm.
sense of dignity is brought back. The
Mm.
stigma, the pain of the stigma is reduced. So this is how
Mm.
I work with a transcending body, say. I
Mm.
don't know whether I explained this, but this
Yeah,
is,
I think that was yeah, especially with stigma in particular.
yeah.
And I think like personally, I had a question around your work with adolescent boys. Like,
Sure.
do you see a difference in what they carry with the changing political situation, like what you might have observed in the 90s versus the other 2 decades and now? Adolescent boys, do they catch on to how masculinity is becoming so much more rigid with like right wing governments?
Sort of, I do not think the masculinity was ever the governments were ever non-rigid. I mean, I
Mm.
think this is liberal sort of a dystopian thing. I mean, I have seen over the years not becoming more rigid or less rigid. It's just becoming more. It's like the virus having a mutant variants. It's like
Yeah.
it'll kill all right. The poison will be there all right. It's just the poison is becoming slightly more nuanced or more legitimized. I mean, see, I think lynching always took place. Except that we never heard of the lynching, and the lynching was not endorsed so brazenly by the state. But the way children have been beaten, boys have been beaten in the juvenile homes, horrible ways of capital punishment. They were brutalized in the juvenile homes. And there were many of them were Muslim boys. You clearly thought that there was the criminalization and the brutalization of these boys was a certain kind of a way the stereotype was reinstated. The Muslims in the country became the blacks of the country. I mean, of the US. It was always there because I worked in the juvenile homes, and the way they were beaten, the way they were brutalized, even the boys who came in were captured just because they couldn't bear with the violence, fell more into the cycle of violence. They had to choose either to be a broken man or to be a mobster, to be a gangster. I mean, I have not included many things in this life because it's so vast. And forgive those ones who expect it to be represented, but I feel that it is such a vast topic, a vast amount of variances, that each one of them are interlinked with each other. So I think all these are like connected, like ek kadi dusre kadi se bandhi hui hai. They immediately comes the other in a rapid succession. So to answer your question, are they becoming that? I don't know. I think the variances are coming about more and more. I also think, to be fair, not getting into the politics of despair, I also think there's a high awareness this time of the observer in the collective consciousness is also there, because things have come out. So the question is, there are far more of healers and arts-based therapists, all kinds of therapists and all kinds of people also available. It wasn't there in the 90s at all. I mean, I never could talk about my profession without giving a whole CV to my life as such, saying what I really did. Today, when you say an arts-based therapist or whatever it is, people, ordinary people are not like people in the commonly, they're not blinking the eyes and saying, what is that? आप नाटक से कैसे therapy कर सकते हैं? Drum therapy ये क्या है? There's a lot of community work, lots of awareness is coming up. Lots of people are working with various sort of tools. So I think the variances are also, there's also an antidote in the anecdotes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like I think when the state is endorsing it, it's also making it visible so that people can observe and notice.
And I can make a choice.
Yeah.
They can make a choice to say, look, we don't agree to that. This is not what it is, and people are making choices. There is a debate going on, and I think the state endorsement is actually almost like a death knell to it, because they don't realize the more you endorse it, the more then the other forces also take over. The critique of the Roman Catholic Church in Europe, the way Christianity is gone, because Christianity was endorsed the way it was. The way people have fought against Khomeini in Iran is because there is the state endorsement and oppression. So I think this is the place of dissonance and dissent has also risen a lot more than before.
Right. So there is a question, and I have a connected question, is that when we work in settings like these, where, as you said, like there's a systemic violence towards these boys and they're brutalized, then what can one expect to be like reasonable shifts or goals or therapeutic goals in such settings, because you can't change the system, right, that much. And a connected question by one of the viewers is, has there been work done with adult abusers? If so, how is it done? So I think maybe working with perpetrators using masculinity and arts-based lens.
I haven't worked with perpetrators yet, to be honest. I'm not going to make that tall claim. I intend to work one day, especially in the juvenile homes, and work with, but I think that's a very intense work. And I think before that, I have to confront the perpetrator within myself. And that's a very tough thing to do. because we all here can claim to be victims or rescuers, but to call yourself, to talk about the inner oppressor within yourself, and the therapist and the social worker who's come from this sort of view that I'm here to save the world, the rescue culture in a sense has promoted me to work with a victim, often doesn't want to look at his own inner oppressor.
Right.
So I think when the therapist or when the social worker starts looking at his own toxic oppressor within oneself, that's when you're ready. That's when you're ready to work with the perpetrators. I'm not yet ready. I am not yet ready. I will like to work one day with my own inner oppressor to see how I have been oppressive and where I have become oppressive or where I became oppressive. Then only I'll be able to work with the perpetrator. Because if someone decides to go and work with the perpetrators without looking at the oppressor, then unconsciously, and I'm saying unconsciously, that person, that therapist is going to be working, will have a cleaved understanding between the victim and oppression in a very bipolar way. Therefore, that work will be that of a rescuer in the front or a fixer. I will fix the problem, but without unknowingly will become an oppressor himself or herself, working with the perpetrators. So I will then have a prescriptive understanding of how an oppressor should be restored. Unconsciously, I will then become a sort of a vendetta carries on. I'm going to take an unconscious vendetta in trying to fix the problem, fix the issue. They need to be fixed. And so I'm playing, I'm getting into a power play there without knowing that. So only if you work with your inner oppressor, you will have the position of compassion, the true compassion, and will not want to fix it. So the thing, rescuing, advising, and projecting, which a lot of the rescue cultures sort of promote, this has to be challenged. And this is our challenge of our times, because we are such do-gooders in our society who wants to fix up everything,
So what is the alternative to fixing? Like, if that's not a very what do you call it, holistic way of working with change? Because the reason I'm asking this is because there's a lot of us here who are from change fields, and so if, like, for a lot of us this is a new thing that I'm not supposed to fix. So what should be maybe the orientation or the philosophy towards this kind of work?
So the arts-based therapy, which I follow in a sense, which I like to follow, at least in a sense, the way I understand, the way it's evolved, is that of the three kind of things which I do is say the witness, the mirror, and the actor. So the process work is often playing with these three spaces as opposed to the oppressor, victim, and rescuer. You become the observer, you look at mirroring, and you look at how what did I say right now? Sorry,
the witness, the mirror, the actor, instead of oppressor and oppressed.
So I think these are the things so instead of fixing, you maybe listen. Maybe in terms of rescuing, you sort of accept that this is the deep acceptance. There is a mirroring, and there is an affirmation. There's a blessing. You allow these three to play. So you do a lamb instead of a frap. You listen, you accept, you mirror, you bless. Even if a perpetrator, you understand the context of the oppressor hasn't been oppressor for the rest of their lives. They've come from a context of being traumatized. And a lot of work in the US prison of capital punishment. If you look at the history of trauma documentary, a lot of work with oppressors has happened in Masculinity, where men who have committed first-rate murders, they have been deeply victimized by a systemic space where they have never been held. Their trauma is that they were deeply rejected, transgenerational. Like black men, for example, are beaten in a certain way by their mothers because that's how slaves have been beaten. So the naked humiliation, the way their buttocks have been whipped, this is how the slaves have been whipped. So they have understood the imprint of trauma across generations. So the trauma is transgenerational. It comes from generation to generation. And therefore, to fix it would be horribly like a band-aid, it will immediately unwork itself. Where deep listening hasn't happened, deep acceptance hasn't happened, deep mirroring hasn't happened. You know, the actor's journey has not, the vehicle has not been seen as, and therefore, you know, the affirmation, the blessing has not taken place. Do I bless the woundedness of my body? Do I bless the suffering of my body? You know, so I have to work with my inner oppressor and to say, you know, what have you not been able to transform? What kind of pain are you transmitting? You know, and this cannot be prescriptive. And I often think that prescriptive ways are often given like a pat solution. So the more experienced as a therapist you are, for different solution, you have different situation, different bodies, you will have different resolution, different responses. That's why the multimodalities of arts come in very handy. Each one is very different in different situations. And therefore the discernment is there. The work on yourself is much more important. You don't think you've arrived. You don't think you're a guru who stopped, reached it. You keep thinking of yourself that, you keep sort of, you know, you have to explore this in variety, you know, and therefore have different kind of modalities. And often multimodalities, working with multimodalities is not easy. It's not everyone's cup. You know, I mean, I know the arts-based therapy groups often say, oh, you have a pat answer. If you do ABT, it's a solution to cognitive psychotherapy. Or this, if you do hypnosis, it's a solution to this. I don't think this is one way or the other. You know, different people at different stages of a client's life, you use different modalities because you're dealing with the transgenerational trauma, you know, layer by layer.
Pranay, we do have an arts-based therapy tradition in India. So actually, that's where I met Vikramjeet. I was doing a course myself. So these are diploma courses, and if you could email us, Pranay, after the session, we'll kind of link you to some of the good courses. I'll need to ask around which are still happening, given that everything's online and stuff. Does Boat do it anymore, Vikramjeet?
No.
No, right? Okay. Yeah. So the question on, like, if we are working in settings where we know there are these systemic barriers and people are kind of maybe being traumatized on a daily basis, right? Like these observation home kids, or like sometimes the victims of violence that I might work with, like who are in families, women who are still in families that continue to affect them in some way. They can't leave for whatever reason. So how do we look at as something being, you know, like a reasonable goal and not like pressure oneself to? Because this I've seen happen in therapists working in tough settings, is that, you know, like they feel like in front of these huge systemic or transgenerational barriers, like what can we even do? So I think goal setting becomes super important in that case.
More also the dropping of hope and despair. Both the polarities have to be dropped. Because you constantly hope that you were going to make a difference. And because when you don't, you're in despair and you lend into burnouts. So here is, I think, alchemical wisdom from, you know, the Vajrayana sort of school of thought, is that crazy wisdom is that you drop hope, you drop despair. You don't hope to do anything. You don't hope to fix. You don't hope to be saying this world is going to be sorted because you are rescuing it. Because if you want to rescue it, then you're going to become the victim. As an arts-based therapist, you understand the world is a play which constantly shifts and change. You are limited. You have limits. I think for me, I can only answer for myself, Sadaf, that I working in Kashmir for so many years, in a sense, like all these conflict areas, there is bound to be a place where you feel like, oh my God, I am not the revolutionary that I thought I was, you know? You are working with children, there are bomb blasts, there are constant violence around, there's constant, you're also looked at with, you know, as the outsider because you're not from the place. With all of this, you have only one understanding, that you drop your own identities, you drop your own preconceived agenda. Everything you drop, you just work with the limits, and you tell, this is what I can achieve today. Just your understanding of what goals you have to achieve, you know? And you accept your humanness, you accept your limitedness, and you also say, what is it in for me? Why do I do what I do? You know? I think if you don't reflect that, if you don't have the patience to listen and to sometimes just say, I can't do anything. You know, I can just listen, and that's where the fragrance of compassion is. Just listen, you know, deep listening and deeply mirroring and holding the space and being the container just for that moment, just for that second. You know, just seeing it play out and saying, this is much to do. You plant the seeds, you create a new cause and condition, you bring something out, and then let the seeds take care of its own. You're doing that. So as a development worker, as a therapist, as an anthropologist, as a theater person, as an artist, we call this word keeping at it. You are at it. You don't look at what you're going to achieve at the end of it. You're not looking at despair either, because you don't have hope. You don't have a logos to telos, like a logic leading to a goal, ultimate goal. There is no paradise. And as soon as you think there is paradise, you will feel that paradise eluded me again. जन्नत तो है ही नहीं, जहन्नुम ही जहन्नुम है, और अगर जहन्नुम को जाने दोगे, जन्नत को जाने दोगे, तो कुछ नहीं रहेगा, you know. And that is not emptiness of the emptiness we think. This is the space between the wheel, the potter's wheel. You move away from the periphery of hope and despair polarities, and you come in to follow into the space, the emptiness of the pot, the emptiness of the potter's wheel. And you go into the fulcrum and you become the witness. Ultimately, you have to become the witness. It's very hard, huh? It's very, very hard. Very difficult. That's why the work, I mean, all of us are completely flawed, completely limited, and we have to keep at it. You know? And our client group is a mirror to us. Where if we move with the clients, we're moving with him. As soon as you think that, oh, I've got a foolproof methodology, this is it. Astrology is the answer. Astrology will change the world. Arts-based therapy will change the world only, or cognition will only change the world. You fall under the trap of actually self-deception, because the world is too mysterious. It can trip you, you know, and you are moving into some sort of a hope there. You don't move into that hope, you know. Anyway.
So I think when you were talking about the, like the witnessing, I think I remember this anecdote you shared about the, what was that called? Swords of Paradise. You want to talk about that for 5 minutes?
Swords of Paradise, which one was it?
I think observation home, you were trying to see if like the boys can be less angsty and less violent with each other, and like how to still channelize their energy.
Oh yeah, did I talk about the fact how they would come rushing with the imaginary sword?
Yeah.
Stop. And so this is the dramatization of the devas and asuras, and this was the battle scene which we had done in the juvenile homes grounds, and this was a battle scene enacted, and I wanted to work with motor control, but I wanted to use motor control was the therapeutic objective. This is before I studied motor control. I was 24 then, you know, so I just knew like they had to go and they had to stop. This was the dramatized version, using stage tactics and using it onto the this thing. So the devas asuras will rush, and there would be a word like stop, and they would stop, and they would go back with the drum beats, and again come back and stop with their raised arms, and they would keep doing it till the third time there would be a swish, and the devas would fall. You know, so a battle of the polarities again, and I kept doing it again and again and again as a rehearsal tactics, till we got into this idea of restraint and self-control, and the idea that you can control, impulses can be controlled. You know, because the children had such attention deficit thing, there was no impulse control. They would just slap all the time. There'll all be the breaking of this thing. So constantly doing that created the habit of impulse control, but it through a narrative of the devas and asuras. So we use the strategy and cultural narratives, because it's Bengali, this is Bengal, this is Calcutta, you know, to create a certain kind of an impulse control with masculinity also, that masculinity is not just the thruster. Like just because you're a guy, you don't have to always slap. You can also have the quality of restraint. And the quality of restraint is the one which actually can be more powerful than just the idea of hitting somebody. So we play with the idea of, use impulsive violence, but stop, hold yourself back. And that created this sort of a idea of motor control also, and impulse control also, and also looking at how masculinity is not about oppression, but also about restraint, also about an artistic device that you can be feed. And the nutter can turn into natya. The impulse of war becomes the product of art.
Yeah, beautiful. I think when you were talking about it in the course, you were also talking about how by the last day of the practice, it was almost like a dance, because the person who was acting out the hitting and the person who was sort of taking it like a defense, they were so in such a sync that it was looking like both the sides were kind of dancing in response to each other.
Yeah. Well, that's how the karate was observed when the bird's wings had gone into, the monk watched it and brought karate like that, observing the birds in action, because the birds were in sort of a dance, So the kung fu and martial arts, the art of fighting without fighting, that's the idea. It's like, that's why it's called martial arts, something based on those ideas. Yeah.
All right, so we are kind of going towards the end of our time. If anybody would like to unmute and see anything, it doesn't have to be a question, like a reflection. Yeah, anything useful, or like, I know we talked a lot about therapy and change work, but if you came here for your own individual sort of understanding, if you'd like to say something, clarify something. There's a lot of things to process, I guess.
Yeah, you can unmute.
How are you feeling, Vikram?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know.
But like, yeah, this was nice. I think 2 hours didn't seem like that.
Hello.
It was really nice. Yeah, there's somebody who's on.
Yeah, so I would like to say something. So this is my first time. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, so this is my first time to understand, masculinity in such a way, looking at the photos, looking at what is exactly portrayed there and between the lines, which was a very new perspective, a fresh perspective for me. I loved how this view was connected to working, bringing about change in individuals, how we deconstruct masculinity. There's a lot of information that was given, which I will have to process, of course. Like, I have to go back and I will have to read more about it. But it has created an interest in me regarding this. And thank you so much for that. You did it very well. It could be like, seen that you had some experience in it. Would love to know more about it, of course. But since time does, like, we have small time, like little time. So yeah. But yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, Pranay. There's a comment where Komal is saying, quite an insightful session. Enjoyed attending it.
Yeah.
Damini has unmuted.
I just wanted to say thank you, and particularly thank you for the just keeping at it perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. Please do trainings. Yeah, so I think Vidhi, you might have joined in a few minutes late. We were talking about how, for those who had signed up for today's session, we could do like a part 2 of applying sort of inner masculine, inner feminine as a more experiential self sort of thing. So yeah, we'll be trying to do that given the COVID situation, maybe July or something. But whoever signed up for today, we'll keep them updated.
Also to look at sexuality and gender. I did not talk about sexuality this time at all. And I think it's very deliberate, as I said earlier on, not to talk about sexuality and also of other forms of transgender kind of a thing and within the range of masculinity. But this is very deliberately done because the topic is very vast. I think that opens up another door altogether. And I think that can be a part 2 to it, and I think that itself can be taken into stages where this can itself become, so this is like a base thing, because I don't know who was coming, what was coming. So I just thought that, photographs of men are an interesting way to look at as an entity. And then you look at other ways, because I think there's a lot of political correctness which goes about in this world today. So I wanted to not to be so sort of cerebral about it, but much more affect or visual around it, and keep things visually. So one can do a session um, on sexuality and the visuals and the images in queer cinema or photographs or cinemas and other things like that in a very different way in another time or
Yeah, I think that's what I think one of the questions was also about trans men and stuff. But yeah, I think like that being vast can be a topic in itself.
Yeah.
All right, so wow, we're ending right on time. Isn't that amazing, Vikramjeet? Yeah. Would love to have some guidance to resources. Okay, so one of the people here is actually working with adolescent boys in the juvenile justice system. So in case you can send me some stuff, I'll send it forward to them then.
Yeah, I have papers written on it. Like I can send you the papers and you can look at them.
Yeah, that would be great. And one of you also wants APT like resources, so hopefully I'll remember and send that across as well.
Is there anything else? Any questions you want to? Someone else said something. You can sort of read that out.
Yeah, although I'm sure all of us already knew how much bodies speak, today's session made me realize how much they still do. Thank you for today. Loved being here. So Yukta is one of our students from, we did like a course on Gen Z mental health, and we talked about curiosity and intention and vulnerability as a therapist and stuff. So it's been a lot of deconstructing for Yukta because she's just 18, So, and I think we spoke about body that day as well.
Yeah, so there's a thing about the pain body and the bliss body. I sort of divided that, and I think a lot of the conversation today was hinting on this word like pain body and bliss body, and the different bodies we carry, not just for men but for women also. So anyone who's working in the field of trauma, psychotherapy, and the arts therapy and other things like that are constantly dealing, and people who are recovering from any form of long-term illness or anything of that sort. So this is a very important part to look at, how you feed the pain body all the time, and for resilience, you have to sort of look at how you can transform this body into the bliss body, or the bliss body is actually waiting right next to it. How do you sort of move there?
You have something on this as well, to send people? The pain body and the bliss body, because I'm sure I'll get an email. So.
I'll look it up. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So one of the things about being an affect non-cognitive work is that
resources are
there hardly any. If it becomes very cerebral, you lose it. So one of the things I always recommend is the best way to know this is to experience it and to make your own theories. The theories come out of your experience, not the other way around.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we used to do, I think, before being colonized. We used to use our experiences as the guiding post.
Absolutely. That's why in Western terminology, the same experience will be called a fetish, but the Indian experience, the Sia will call it bhava. So it's very interesting. A fetish is a very different sort of word to at a certain kind of a tradition, which is Western psychoanalytic tradition, and whereas bhava is where Natya Shastra and other things, which is also the medicine, it's very different. The idea of the emotions are called jazbat. Jazbat is very different Arabic roots to it than say emotion. And it's very interesting in different point of views. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, I think people are just commenting about how that's made worse in formal psychological schooling, basically where therapists get trained. It's so bad, the cerebral stuff. It's all cerebral only. And most of our professors are our first traumatizers, I think. First oppressors.
Well, there is definitely a dismemberment of sort, and therefore there needs to be a remembering. And the arts essentially provide that remembering.
Yeah.
Members of the body are remembered. That's why, because it works with the senses, you see.
Yeah, definitely. I think when you're integrated, you're in touch with the part of you that's oppressing the other, so you can't actually oppress the other
because you're inside the trauma. You do not have the distance, because the artistic distance then makes you see, oh my God, this is my body in this dismembered form.
Yeah. So this was, please do an art embodiment trauma course. Yeah, you've given us ideas, definitely. But I think the therapist community and the teacher community is definitely carrying a lot. So hopefully we'll be able to create spaces for that.
There has to be a space. There have to be spaces of self-care, And the self-care tool and the self-care processes have to be understood by looking at the oppressor within. The key line is, the key thing, as I don't know whether people got it or not, I don't know, but if you think you're not oppressors, you are deluding yourself.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's when I realized it for myself, was when I would rebuff my mother at times and stuff. And I was like, how am I different from my dad in certain ways? Because I may not be doing it as much as him, but I still think a career oriented woman like me is somehow more important than her. And that was coming up in some of our interactions unconsciously. So
Also,
I think,
it's not just like physical work, but also intellectual prescriptions. Intellectual prescriptiveness is extremely violent, because it tells you that this is only the way to do it, like bullet point ways, higher intellectual prescription. This is how the psychiatrists are so violent, I think.
the one truth and the one meaning.
This is it. You are bipolar, and so will you remain for the rest of your life. I've heard so many people get this prescription, but from the Buddhist point of view, nobody's anything for the rest of your life. Everything changes.
Yes.
How are you pathologized for the rest of your life?
Exactly.
You're medicated and then you're further pathologized.
Definitely.
Like restoration and reformations and observatory homes are high beds of criminalization. So in that sense, you got it right.
Yeah, I think this whole idea of putting a problem group together in some place and removing them from sight, that's the breeding ground of a lot of trauma itself.
Yeah, and the arts can give a larger picture, the fuller picture. It steps away and looks at a fragmented memory gets a holding, a container, and you have an artistic distance to look at it, a perspective to it, which is why, in the lockdown, we go back to Netflix to look at stories.
Yeah.
And that's your answer to isolation. You want to see stories which hold you. Fantasies.
I have one question.
Sure.
Yeah. So this is a little bit off topic. Like it is regarding my work that I do. Like I deal with a lot of special students like autism and lower intellectual disability students and all kind of students. So my question here is like like you said, the body image, their body speaks for themselves. And with these students with special needs, it's there, it's out there in the body only. Like for non-verbal people who could not communicate with words, we can see from their body, like whether they are understanding what I'm trying to speak, or whether they are not interested, or they don't want to do it. These anything we can figure it out from their non-verbal clues. I still I wanted to know whether this art-based therapy will relate to them.
Yeah. There are lots of organizations who are working a lot with using arts with special children with special needs. It's very, very successful because it's tactile. But it's not all elements of tactile sort of works. It depends on which and what, and then you have to sort of, it all depends on individual cases. There is no mass solution to it, but there's a lot of work there. A lot of work is going on right now.
Because they are very sensitive to things like.
Absolutely. So that's why you need to know what works. You have to figure it out, and you have to look at it, and you have to see it. It's exploratory. It's a lot of observation, a lot of sensory work. But there's a lot of work already in research working. There is my colleague in Pragnadhara in Bangalore. The entire special school is based on arts research.
Oh, great. And one more thing, this masculinity, how can I connect that with the special kids? Like they are not very matured and sort of things, and they do not adhere to the normal general population also. Like to a boy who is like stigmatized on crying, but a special kid is not stigmatized to crying. So how do I do impose this theory to them? Like, is there a flaw? I don't know how to.
So my response to you is that when you use the word impose and when you use the word theory, I don't think one can impose a theory to a special child. I don't think
Obviously, like, how do I do it in my work to them? Like,
well, what you can, I think one of the things you learn from here is to become the observer of the body itself, and that doesn't require. So a special child is actually somebody where the gender is not so much important as a sexuality becomes important. But it's very interesting because almost like special children have sexuality which is operative in a certain way. So more than gender, one here looks at sexuality and see how you sort of observe this. And this requires a different kind of a conversation altogether,
I know.
and a special conversation altogether. So I won't attempt to answer this, but I will say from today's conversation, look at the observer, look at the mirroring, and mirroring can be done through nonverbal ways. And there is also the idea, the actor, the agency. Who's the agency involved here? How do you work with the agency? Because a special child is also an agency, is also an actor, and you're an actor in that landscape. So looking at also between the fixer, do you want to fix things or do you want to be at it? You want to be developmental. You want to go along as you go along, and as you go along, the child will tell you what it works. For me, the child, the student, if you put that as a center, they will guide you to guide them. This is my understanding.
Yeah. And I think adding to that, if you do an arts-based therapy course, there is a lot of training on how to work with children with special needs, because
it's my forte though.
Yeah. So they do talk a lot about maybe adjusting your goals around, can we just do like motor stuff for them and stuff
absolutely.
like that. But yeah, I think applying arts to that group, because that was my group in arts-based therapy, so I can talk about it is difficult if you've not done regular work with them to then try and apply arts-based work to them. So since you have that experience, I think you can use that approach beautifully because you already know this group. But yeah, you do have to adjust the goals a little bit, I think. And then apply. Yeah.
As Sir said, some are sensitive to color, some are not. Like, so depending on the sensory issues, and obviously the other environmental factors as well.
Yeah. So the ABT stuff, when I send it across some courses which are still happening, probably look it up and go for one of those. It might be helpful.
So my specialization is with children with difficult circumstances or adults with difficult circumstances. And to me, I use a lot of narrative developmental work, how stories are developed and stuff, how stories bring about, the anecdote has the antidote kind of a process. So that's my kind of a specialization, or that's my kind of work, or looking at complex PTSD, looking at all those things, so CPT, PTSD is my sort of forte. So that's where that's what my practitioner's goal or my work has been. And this kind of a way is to educate people, to look at trauma-based education, to look at gender-based education, to look at also artistic and image-oriented observations. How do you sort of spot things in people's bodies? I mean, that's why it's very generic today's conversation for everyone. And also critical thinking before you get into work.
Yeah.
You can be a critical thinker. That's why you look at the Central Vista project. You have to critically think as to what it is doing. It is not an architecture space which earlier colonizers haven't done. So what is the departure here? How different are they? In what way they meet like the earlier colonizers, and what are they doing now? And what is the dismemberment happening now? These are the critical questions, and this doesn't lead necessarily to despair. It just lets you know, to bring your awareness, and that you actually strength to deal with it, to negotiate yourself with it, to also push back.
Definitely. All right. So thank you so much, Vikram, for your time on a Saturday, because I know you also have travel and work with travel. So thank you for doing this.
Could I see everyone's faces before? This is a kind of an opening closure I sort of do. So just come up again online. Let me look at all the lovely people who have sort of.
I think some people might have gone at 4 because of time restraints. But whoever is there, thank you for putting your camera on.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining and listening to me, and take care of yourself and keep at it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Thank you. Bye.